It's a great pleasure and honor to introduce today's lunchtime concert with ConTempo, featuring the music of Mozart and Schubert. If somebody asked me the famous question what I would bring to a deserted island, and I could only pick the music of two composers, these two would have to be my choice. Growing up in Austria with a mother who liked opera meant that I've appreciated both composers from an early age. I still remember a music teacher who had me perform Schubert's song The Drought in front of a co-ed class of 16-year-olds. She was accompanying me on the piano with unflinching dedication, her back to the class, seemingly unaware of the wild amusement that broke out at the back of the room. Several of my male classmates, who most certainly did not share the teacher's passion for classical music, had a field day, nearly falling out of their chairs with laughter. When I arrived in Galway in my late 20s, I was delighted to find myself in a place with such a rich and versatile musical culture, and I have particularly enjoyed the wonderful chamber music programs over the years. I would now like to give you my personal responses to the two pieces featuring in today's ConTempo concert. Let me start with Mozart's String Quartet No. 21 in D major, nicknamed the Violet. The first movement, Allegretto, evokes for me images of a train journey between the two beautiful cities of Salzburg and Vienna. It starts in the romantic Lake District and the foothills of the Alps, then leads further to the east, the hills getting gentler and opening out into generously rolling farmlands that eventually give way to the valley of the Danube. And finally, the train reaches Vienna. At Mozart's time, the administrative center of the Holy Roman Empire and the capital of the Archduchy of Austria. Mozart must have been very familiar with this particular stretch, since it lies between his birthplace Salzburg and Vienna, where he spent most of his short adult life and where he died in 1791. When looking out the window of a comfortable train compartment into Austria's heartlands, I imagine what Mozart might have seen all those years ago, looking out of a horse carriage on a journey so much more taxing and strenuous. As the first movement unfolds, I soon witness an animated conversation between four voices that are amazingly well attuned to each other, equal partners taking turns in leading the conversation and receding into the background. There is a deceptive lightness and ease in the engagement of these four voices, as they explore their main themes in the rhythm of question and answer, their voices rising and falling. The second movement, Andante, with its song-like quality, brings a real change in atmosphere. I experience it as more intimate and introverted, full of subtle yearning. It resembles Mozart's song The Violet from 1785. It's the only poem by Goethe Mozart ever set into music. And yet, despite its similarities to song, this movement too is not a monologue, but contains a shyer, more restrained dialogue of moving emotional depth. I now imagine a cozy cottage on the edge of a forest, maybe my grandparents' house in rural Austria. It's a winter evening. The early dusk is setting in and envelops a figure sitting at the window, thinking of a loved one. The third movement sets in with a vivaciousness and playfulness that reminded me of the magic flute duet between Papageno and Papagena. Listening to the minuet, courtly dance scenes appeared in my imagination, partly shaped, for better or worse, by the Mozart interpretation of Milos Forman's film Amadeus. The trio is famous as a showpiece for cello. Mozart had dedicated this quartet and two others to Friedrich Wilhelm II, the King of Prussia, who was an amateur cellist. But Mozart never received the promised commission for these works, and financial difficulties in the last years of his life increased further. The final movement, Allegretto, transports me back to the train journey of the start and the lively conversation between the four voices. They revisit their earlier themes in playfully nuanced variations and develop them with refined subtlety. I now want to say a few words about Schubert's Quartettsatz in C minor from 1820. It is the first movement of a string quartet Schubert never completed. I feel this piece reaches into the depths of the human psyche and is a hauntingly powerful musical portrayal of the tension of opposites that we humans have to bear and negotiate. The joyful beauty of the main melody is interrupted by a repeated onslaught of terrifying scales that eventually ebb away again to give rise to a sweet, mesmerizing melody, until the next attack of darkness. I imagine swans gliding effortlessly over the calm surface of dark water in the Austrian Lake District, until a thunderstorm trapped by the surrounding mountains destroys the harmony. What a stirring musical portrayal of the struggle between hope and the beauty of life on the one hand, and the torturous grip of inner and outer demons on the other. ConTempo could not have chosen a better piece for a concert in these times of uncertainty and confusion.